What's up? It's your boys Jordan and Abraham. He's a professional runner, so he's your fast friend. I'm an MD PhD student, so I'm your smart friend. But most importantly, we are your friends who read One Piece.
Yes, sir.
This has got a special episode coming to you guys today, straight from St. Louis. Jordan is here with me, right beside me. You guys probably can't tell. Probably doesn't sound any different to you, but he is here. And he is going to be catching some hands if he says blasphemous stuff.
You know, it's lucky we got our friend Alex over here in the background, kind of just sitting helping us set up his mic at his house, and he might have to jump in a couple times because normally we can't jump through the screens at each other.
Yeah,
but it might get a little heated this podcast.
You usually have a couple 100 miles protecting you. You can't say this.
From what?
You're normal. From you know I've been in the gym.
You know, I know you've been at the gym, but you still like 5'7", looking weak. All I know is how many points you scored in the game we played yesterday. We're playing a little volleyball at our friend Chris Noda's 30th birthday.
I have one question for you. Between the two of us, who got spiked on and put it over? I feel like you're supposed to be a professional athlete, right? Supposedly.
I'm a professional runner.
You're also supposed to be taller than me. Yet somehow in a game, basically a game of volleyball, you ended up being on the receiving end of my spike and had me stand over you.
I feel like you just are trying to be a big man, being a little short, being a little low. You were low in your height and you were low in your score.
Facts are the facts.
And you were trying to just come over that.
The facts are the facts.
But Abraham, I have an announcement to make.
Okay.
We are currently at 493 downloads, which is almost to 500, which is halfway to the benchmark that we set for when we're going to buy actual microphones.
Yes.
So if you like the sound quality of this and you were listening, continue to help us get more friends who read One Piece.
Absolutely.
To listen to this podcast. I want to give a shout out to our friends in Germany. That's now the second biggest country besides the United States in terms of our listeners.
Did it take over Belgium?
It took over Belgium. Okay. It used to be Belgium. So I want to give a shout out to our friends in Germany who read One Piece. We love our European fam. And we're excited to almost certainly reach 500 after this episode.
Belgium, you got to step your game up now, right? The Germans are coming for you.
Hold on, man. We can't talk about Germans coming for you. I'm a Jewish man on this podcast, and we don't make too many jokes about Germans coming for you in our community. But as we are almost at the end of the break, I've been getting a little scratchy, and so I'm excited to finally get rid of some of that I don't even remember what you call it anymore, but when you have that dependency and you get a little scratchy because you don't have it. And we have a big topic this week that's been blowing up on our Discord server. In fact, a lot of our friends who are also on the server had to stop posting and were just tired of it, didn't want to read anything because we could not stop arguing with each other. And the bottom line is that you think that through the second half of the series that Usopp has been this super courageous character, which is obviously absolutely insane. Now, can you explain to me how you arrived at this conclusion?
I think I need to send you back to primary school so you can work on your reading comprehension. Because what I said is that Usopp is my favorite straw hat.
Well, you said
he's my favorite straw hat. And the reason he's my favorite straw hat, first and foremost, is because he's the funniest straw hat. Usopp is actually hilarious. Like, it's not even, I don't even think it's close. And you look throughout the story, and outside of, I would say, Luffy, obviously, and Zoro, he arguably has some of the hardest hitting moments in the series.
Talking about these moments, Abraham, what are these so-called moments that are harder hitting than any moments that a lot of our other characters had over the course of the series?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not including flashbacks, though. That's
okay.
No flashbacks, because obviously Usopp doesn't have some great backstory. He was just like abandoned by his kid, like half the characters, or abandoned by his dad. Yeah, like half the characters in the story. So we're not talking about backstories, but from the jump, his fight against Captain Kuro, where he's running into the village as the boy who cried wolf. He's trying to get everyone to know that shit is about to go, and no one believes him, and you just see how broken he looks on.
I want to be clear. Let's not call it his fight against Captain Kuro because he never fought against Captain Kuro.
That's true. He didn't.
But continue.
Yeah, but the whole Captain Kuro syrup village thing.
Right.
That was the first time Usopp moved me because it was just like he was hopeless, and he while he didn't fight Kuro, he single-handedly was ready to take on all of, I can't remember their crew's name, but the whole pirate crew. And you know what?
This
he
is
was
the revisionist history that drives me crazy.
No,
What
he
do you
did.
mean?
He took
He
them
was
on.
ready to take on the
He
whole.
was fighting them, was he not? And then Luffy and Zoro showed up, obviously.
Like he threw some caltrops on the ground.
Right.
Like Kuro was about to show up and like I would not say that Usopp was ready to take on his entire pirate crew. He was ready to posture for a couple seconds. He was ready to throw some caltrops on the ground.
He would have lost, but he was ready to fight.
I do not think that what he was ready to do was fight them. I think he was ready to stand there and try and be a distraction until his super strong friends he just met were going to show up and actually fight Kuro.
Revisionist history. He didn't actually know that they were going to show up. Regardless, we can move on because Syrup Village is still East Blue. You know, this is not like the strongest Usopp moment.
Right.
For me, the most emotional emotional Usopp moments happen during Enies Lobby and Water 7. Because the whole crew is that whole arc to me is about testing the strength of the bonds that the Straw Hat crew have. Obviously, with Robin abandoning them and such. But also, Usopp starts to get into his head, you know, about like this inferiority complex that he has because he's one of the weaker members of the crew. And he's like, you know, in my opinion, in his head, what's going on is if he's not able to kind of rise to the challenges that they are going to come across as they continue to sail, he's worried about being abandoned. And as all of this is happening, the ship that his friend got him, the Going Merry, is a crewmate that they're going to have to abandon. I feel like you get a lot of projection from Usopp in this arc. Obviously, he has this big falling out with Luffy. That whole fight. If you tell me that fight didn't move you, that's
a really strong moment. I really enjoyed what that meant for Usopp, Luffy, and the crew. I thought it was really interesting seeing him create these sort of like MacGyver-ish ways of approaching that fight.
Yeah.
That while you're watching it, you honestly, or reading it, you honestly almost come to believe for a second
could win.
That maybe
he could win. Like, is he gonna beat Luffy?
And obviously at the end, Luffy just like punches him into the ground. He's like, you knew there was no way that you could beat me. But you do have this appreciation for Usopp's growth in that moment and his ability to potentially become something that's going to help the crew, despite him beginning as a coward and being the weakest member of the crew.
And then you also have his moment shooting down the flag in Enies Lobby, which was fire. I think the speech that Sanji gives him is like, just because you can't beat Jabura, like, doesn't mean that there's no purpose to you being here. It's kind of like repurposing Luffy's thing, Luffy's speech against Arlong, where he's like, there's all these things that I can't do. Right? He's like, just because you can't do this doesn't mean you can't help us. And then obviously he has this whole speech that he gives to Luffy as he's like laying down at Lucci's feet. Like, and this lobby is just jam-packed with Usopp moments. I kind of skipped over Alabasta, but obviously I think his fight against Miss Merry Christmas and Mr. Four was fire.
That's a good one too. And here's the thing, because I want to jump in here because I really like that you are talking about Enies Lobby as, you know, some might say the peak of Usopp. I
think Elbaf will be. I think Elbaf will be.
Man, oh my god, we're not getting into Elbaf.
But you know what? You go ahead.
We have not gotten to Elbaf yet. We're not there.
Okay.
To this point, you might say that that's his peak. Obviously, that's like around, you know, chapter 400 or so.
Yeah.
And I think for this character who we had seen over the course of that first 400 chapters, go from a guy in Syrup Village who, you know, basically he can throw caltrops on the ground, he can serve as a distraction, he can shoot down the branch, or he can shoot Django while he's riding around on Zoro's back.
Yeah.
And Zoro shoots down, and Zoro cuts down the tree so he can actually see him. And then you go to Arlong Park, and I think one of the really cool moments there is when he actually beats the Fishman, because he's this dude who like really isn't special.
Yeah.
He's the dude who is the most normal dude. His powers are even things. Like, yes, Sanji kicks, but like no one could actually kick like Sanji.
Right.
The things Usopp can do are
he's a normal person
that are average dude could do, and he managed to beat a Fishman.
Yeah.
And he says like, wow, this is crazy. Even I can actually beat, you know. Then obviously he gets back up for a second.
Usopp?
He just like, Usopp's hammer! Usopp's hammer! Rubber band of death!
Hilarious! It's hilarious!
Obviously, like, those are all great moments. And it reaches a point in Eni's lobby where he has a disagreement with the captain. He demonstrates this ability to fight with ingenuity, and he demonstrates some amount of courage while, even though he's wearing a mask, he's doing things like shooting down the flag and being Sogeking the Sniper King. However, over the second half of the series,
you mean like post time skip when you say second half?
Basically, yeah. I mean, he wasn't in. Yeah, I guess he was in Thriller Bark, but he wasn't in the next major arcs of the Marine for etc. But basically, since Eni's lobby, a lot of the character development that I think we saw the potential for, of him actually going off becoming this brave warrior of the sea, has been wasted. To me, it feels like we have this dude who, yes, he was like a super coward. And that doesn't mean that he's not ever supposed to like demonstrate some amount of cowardice. Yeah. But there's just so much Usopp whining and being like, oh my God, I'm so scared. And like not actually using that ingenuity that we had seen, or at the very least, not using it in a way that feels like it's demonstrating his courage of being like, I'm going to get around being a dude who's scared all the time. And using that to actually potentially find ways to beat people who are up, who he's facing like right in front of him. Yeah. And so for me, like, yes, all this I'm a coward stuff is funny for a while. Yeah. But I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of it for 700 chapters of like, before the Battle of Sugar, he's like, oh my God, I'm so scared. I'm going to run away. I'm going to run away. Yes, he eventually comes and we can talk about that later. But like, I don't need those 8 pages of him being a coward after he's been with this crew for that long. Really quickly, Wano, obviously the one that we all look at, he doesn't even have a redeeming moment over the course of this entire arc. He just tells Nami, oh, I don't want, like, Nami, it's okay. Don't tell him. Just lie to him. Don't tell him that Luffy's going to be the Pirate King, which is so antithetical to this idea of him wanting to support people's dreams. Right. And so while I appreciate what you're saying about that Eni's lobby, about what he showed, I think that a lot of the potential that he demonstrated there, both as a character and as a fighter, has been essentially completely wasted, and I'm tired of it.
I think you're talking about two different things. You mentioned courage and bravery, and then you also mentioned like wasted potential. And I think what you're conflating is I agree. Oda has not been very creative with being able to write hype fight scenes for Usopp in the post time skip. But I don't think that that is the same thing as saying that Usopp as a character has not been brave or courageous. Like those are two different things. And I think it's something that a lot of the weaker crew members in general are going to struggle with as we progress through the series. So what I'm saying, in my opinion, Usopp has always been brave. Like from the moment we met him, Usopp had, or from the moment he joined the crew, he's been a brave warrior of the sea. Because the way that I define bravery, I think the way a lot of people define bravery is not, like, I don't consider Zoro a brave character because I think bravery is the ability to take action despite being afraid of doing something, not just not being afraid to do something, right? So
sure, we can get into that.
And you can maybe if you have you can have a different definition of bravery.
I think that's a perfectly fine definition. Yeah, like right. I can get it. We can get into more about how I feel like that represents itself for Zoro, Luffy, etc.
Sure. But like my point is that Usopp has always been a brave warrior of the sea, in my opinion. I actually think we're gonna kind of get to the end of the story, and it's his arc is going to be more of like an internal realization of what it means to be like brave. He's obviously continuously getting stronger as we progress through the series. But I think a lot of the issues that you're pointing to is like, back in Eni's lobby, we had this whole nuanced fight between him and Luffy, and like you said, we genuinely believe that he might be able to like win this fight, and we haven't gotten any moments like that in the post time skip. And I think the problem is that the scale of the opponents that we've been fighting has just increased so much in these later parts of the stories that a lot of these weaker Straw Hat characters, like I think this is something that Nami and Chopper are both going to suffer from combat-wise, not character-wise, because I think that I hope that Oda is going to still be able to develop these characters outside of the context of combat, right? Like Nami navigating to Laugh Tale, right? I think there's going to be some kind of massive navigational feat that she's going to be able to pull off. But I don't expect to see her have some cool combat moments like she did in Alabasta, where she defeats like Mr. One's partner, right? Like,
right. But again, right, like she had a moment that was instrumental in helping the crew get out of Whole Cake Island, in that she was the one who like landed one of the biggest blows of anyone against Big Mom as they're trying to escape.
True, but Usopp also, like, I know it's written kind of comically, but the whole crew literally falls apart in Dressrosa. Like, Luffy is turned into a toy, Law is turned into a toy. They all just
did Luffy get to know it?
No, he would have been. He would
Sugar,
have been, because Sugar was getting ready to touch both Luffy and Law before Usopp unlocked observation hockey. And so if we're just talking about, I understand it wasn't written in any kind of hype way, because I agree the way he defeated Sugar wasn't all that exciting, but it was very instrumental in them even getting out of that arc.
It was funny and it was helpful, and I'm not saying that was not a really cool moment, and that is a moment that demonstrated some amount of ingenuity, right? Like creating the star that's of his face, getting completely defeated by Sugar and being completely lucky,
and Treble.
Well,
Treble was
whatever. It was like complete luck that he ended up getting out of that situation is the whole point. But I want to get back before we actually get into this conversation about that, because I think that fight is really at the core of what we're gonna kind of be talking about, and I want to take a second to talk about that definition of bravery, and how I see that, because I think that for me that's really at the heart of a lot of this disagreement. The first part about it for me, so I'll respond quickly about what I see with Zoro and Luffy, right? And a lot of this, I'll say, comes from my own experience as an athlete. It's one thing when you are standing at the start line of a race and you're actually shaking and you're telling everyone you're nervous, and you're looking around and you're like, oh my God, like I'm scared, or like, oh my God, I'm on the start line next to whomever. My first US championships, I was to the right of Evan Jaeger, who is the best steeplechaser, he's the American record holder. He's run 8 minutes. So Olympic silver. He wasn't Olympic silver medalist yet, I don't think. Actually, no, he was the Olympic silver medalist the previous year. Yeah, exactly. And I'm a dude who at that point is just like an unsponsored guy. It's my first US championship. However, when I'm standing on that start line, it's about your external, what you demonstrate and the way you teach yourself to be is to approach it. Even though I was waking up the night before that race with nightmares about the race, you approach it holding yourself incredibly calmly and understanding that you have a job to do and you have to get the best out of yourself, and you have to figure out how to channel what that nervousness, fear, whatever is into that race. That is what I don't think is expressly talked about a lot when we talk about people like Zoro, when we talk about people like Luffy and things like that. But that's what I believe is going on with them. I think you can make an argument that it's less there for Luffy, and there's a whole piece about that I'm disappointed in some of his character development in that way too. But I think with Zoro, certainly I feel like that's there, and with other characters I think that's the case even when they're strong. What I see also with someone like Usopp, who doesn't necessarily have the ability to just beat a lot of characters, right? Because it's one thing being I'm on the US championship start line, I have to get the best out of myself. It's another thing if it's you actually have to beat this character to do it, and I don't know if I couldn't beat Evan Jaeger, and I don't know what I could do. When I was in college, it was my last cross country race of college, actually, and it was the Northeast Regional when I was at Brown, and we had to figure out the best strategy to help me try and get to nationals. And I want to just go out and put myself in a higher place and say, if I blow up, I blow up. And then if I don't blow up, then, I'll make it into the race. But blow up is in you go out too fast and then you're too tired. And then you have a really sometimes dramatic and tremendous, you fall backwards. Right. And my coaches said, listen, a lot of guys think that courage is just saying, well, I put myself there and that's what I did. But actually, courage is not just throwing yourself there and saying, well, I'm going to see what happens. Courage is saying, I know what the best thing that I can do is to give myself the best end result and the best chance to be successful. And that doesn't always look like the most obviously quote unquote courageous or the quote unquote fearless thing. It looks different, but that is real courage. And that's what I don't see Usopp demonstrating in a lot of these post-time skip fights. When after he whines all the time with when he's about to go out with Sugar and Treble. I keep wanting to call her Carrot for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
With Sugar and Treble.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, I have all these like crazy little stars. I have all these crazy gadgets. The way I fought Luffy was this fun thing. He just says, okay, after I decided I'm not going to leave them, I'm just going to go out and be like, announce myself very publicly and be like, hey, I'm shooting my star.
Sure.
Like, I'm Captain Usopp. And that's not what he would have given him a chance to do anything.
Right.
He could have got Sugar to pass out somehow by doing something creative, but that was not the answer.
So I want to respond to that real quick, right? Because I think the big thing about the Luffy Usopp fight is that he had setup time, right? I think Usopp with setup time is able to come up with all of these kind of creative solutions to do those kinds of things. Whereas in that moment, for example, right, he's just there in that moment, and he has to. And
he had 2 years. He had 2 years of a break before then.
No, to train and get stronger.
To train and get stronger.
But and he did.
He had another like 2 arcs, Punk Hazard, Fishman Island. He had multiple arcs to also figure that out. Part of what he should be developing as a fighter is the ability to think on the fly and not be like, I need setup time.
No, but what I'm getting at is, again, I think we all think that someone like Treble and even someone like Sugar are, if we're scaling how strong these characters are, they far outclass him, right? The reason why Usopp is able to challenge someone like Luffy and make it into an interesting fight is because of this kind of whole idea of setup time, right? If he's fighting someone that's roughly equal to his level, then I agree with you. But in that context that he was in right there was any way that Oda wrote Usopp beating Treble and Sugar would have felt like the biggest plot armor, and it would have felt horrible.
Nami landed a giant blow against Big Mom. It doesn't have to be that he beat Sugar and Treble. It could be that from the shadows he somehow found a way to get Sugar to pass out. Right? That he created some kind of distraction, created some kind of something. That's what he could have done.
But he does do that later in that same arc.
Later, but I'm saying, but when I talk about what's annoying about the courage not being there, it's when he's not. It's because they're like not right in front of him, right? And what he did to me is not demonstrating.
So courage. the other thing I kind of want to point out is I think a lot of these things that the shtick that you're tired of is a gag. To some degree, it's a gag that Oda loves, and maybe you don't love it. I personally love the whole idea of, oh, I'm getting this island sickness disease. I'm getting like this whole Usopp being afraid of things. It's kind of like Zoro getting lost, Sanji getting nosebleeds, Luffy getting beat up by Nami and having like this blown up. Like there are certain gags with different characters in his series that Oda likes to repeat over and over and over again. Some of which I love. I hate the Sanji nosebleed thing, for example, right? Because I think much in the same way you think this is overplayed, I think that whole shtick with Sanji has actually taken away from his character. I personally don't feel that way about the Usopp cowardly, brave duality kind of thing, but like it's just one of the, like Oda has his shticks.
Is your phone ringing right now? Is your phone ringing? Hello?
Who's on the line?
It's a crack dealer? You looking for Abraham?
Oh, that must be your crack. That must be your.
No, man. Cause last time you were saying it was my phone. The other time you were like, "Why are they calling my phone?" We're here in person. I'm looking at your phone right now. I'm holding it, and it's your crack dealer coming up. He said, "Man, I heard you want to come with some One Piece ideas. I heard you want to come with some One Piece ideas, and you needed some help. So your crack dealer is actually calling you up,
my crack dealer
trying to give you those ideas.
He was One Piece.
Nah, man. Abraham had too much. So I'm trying to be a good friend, and Abraham's had too much crack lately, and he's out here saying completely wild things. So, I hope to not have any more future calls with you.
You're talking.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate
talking with a lot of familiarity with this person that you've allegedly never met before. I feel like the amount of familiarity that you have with my crack dealer leads me to believe that maybe you've had some pre-existing relationship with this guy.
He told me that he was the crack dealer on the phone just now. That's all that I knew. But Abraham, I think it's time. We're coming up. The one thing that I do have a dependency on is not crack, unlike you, but One Piece. And I've been getting a little bit scratchy as we've been on chapter 1111 for over 3 weeks at this point.
Yeah.
So it's finally time for me to ask, what do you think we have coming in chapter 1112?
So we've been teased with this Vegapunk reveal for like a month and a half now, right? I think in 1109.
I'm at least at like quarter chub.
Yeah. Like 1109, I think, is when we first got this reveal that he's going to expose something about the world government for the world.
Right.
And 1110 happened, 1111 happened. We didn't get anything. My prediction is that in 1112, we are still not going to get anything. Oda's going to buy time, do some other things, and then at the end of the chapter, we're going to be like, we might get like a name drop or some like random tiny little reveal, but we're not really going to get into that until 1113.
I really hate to say it, but I kind of agree with you.
Yeah.
I feel like the pace that we have been going at over the course of this, like, wait for the reveal has been a little bit slower than we might like and or expect. I know that I talk about the word plays a lot, and I've mentioned that 1113 and 1114, if you like the word plays, could be read as one piece. So that's kind of an interesting.
They both could. Two different numbers can be read the same way.
It's hard to explain, but because 3 is san and 4 can be not just yon but also shi, you have the s sound at the beginning of each of them, so they can both they can both be one piece. And obviously 1116 is Imu, or 16 Imu. I'm big on that. So I think we're gonna get 13 and 14. I'm very much hoping that in one of those we're gonna get some serious reveals about the world. In 16, I think we're definitely gonna see Im, but I don't know for sure. I would guess that we're not gonna see anything in this chapter. I think we're still gonna have a little bit more fighting, and I wonder if I know there's a lot of talk online about, has Robin been potentially abducted? I know there's a lot of theorizing. Like, I think there's still a little bit more to see about what the Elder Stars are actually doing and what that fight is going to look like, and where they're going to go to actually try and stop the broadcast. I think we're going to get a little bit more information about that rather than actually finding out what's in it.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's what we got for our predictions. We'll see. I know I've been a little bit more right about I'm going to be a little more
what? In what? Do we need to go through the transcripts and go through each prediction? That's wild.
But on this one, we actually agree, so it's pretty nice. But now it's time for S Class or F Class, the segment where Abraham and I find theories on the internet and rate them so you don't have to. And before we get started on this, Abraham, I wanted to give you a very quick question about our discussion last week.
Okay.
You suggested that if Laughtail is in or accessed through Ennie's lobby, that ruins the theory. I know I was talking about a whale at the bottom of Ennie's lobby, and you're saying that's because the world government would then just know where Laughtail is. And I'm honestly was thinking about it, and I was like, why does it necessarily matter if the world government knows where Laughtail is, if what they're just trying to do is prevent people from accessing the treasure because of what it would do to their power?
Mm-hmm. Well, because then they could just move the treasure, right? Like, why would they not move it to like Pangea Castle or so? Like, why would they keep it there?
I think that there could be potential answers for that in the story that would be satisfying at the very least. But I just kind of wanted to get your answer for that.
Yeah.
The first theory I have today is from Koyaki Channel, a Japanese YouTuber. Not to jump back in with some of the underwater stuff, but this theory is that Laughtail may not be in a giant whale, like I've suggested before, but that it is in an underwater cove or cavern, and that one way to access it is through Ennie's lobby, which the world government has kept open for their own means, and another way to potentially get there is beneath Reverse Mountain. Thematic evidence for this theory is that the Mercator projection of the North Pole, a Mercator is basically a guy who invented maps, is super famous for that, which separates the world into 4 pieces in a way in this map that actually really resembles Reverse Mountain, kind of with an X at the top. And in this projection of the North Pole, there's a big mountain at the pole and a big hole underneath that, which does kind of line up with some of the One Piece could be somewhere beneath Reverse Mountain type theories. Is that an F class or an S class theory?
I feel like I didn't understand that fully. So this Mercator person, is this someone in real life?
He's a real life person who basically invented maps.
Okay.
And when we talk about thematic evidence that Oda has brought in from the real world
Uh-huh.
into the One Piece world.
Yeah.
You know, for example, we see characters who look like, you know, the Elder Stars look like real world leaders.
Yeah.
In the Mercator projection, it looks a lot like the One Piece world if you were to look at it from Reverse Mountain at the center of it.
Okay. And so, yeah. So, in my head, the reverse mountain has to go down to the seafloor, right? Like, it's not just like floating in the ocean, right?
Well, because this theory involves an underwater cove or cavern or something like that,
Yeah.
it could be the kind of thing that's potentially cut out into like an
Oh,
underwater,
like a
exactly,
like a
like
hole
a
at the bottom.
subterranean, exactly, yeah, exactly, or within the middle of it somewhere.
You know what I'm gonna get.
Come on, man.
What? Okay, so
why are you always hating on these underwater theories?
no, because all of what I feel like you came to me today and you're like, what if it was underwater? And all of these underwater theories are like, what if it was underwater? And that's like the entire basis of the theory.
like it's on the moon. Like
no. There are actual like thematic things that you can point to, and I mean, you don't think Laptail's on the moon, but you think the moon can be important and might be a destination we go to later in the story, right? You just don't think Laptail's on the moon, right?
Sure.
So it's not just like someone one day was like, what if Laptail is on the moon? Someone was like, the moon is an integral part of the One Piece lore. We have all these different civilizations from there.
One thing that we do have is
whereas this underwater thing is just like, what if Laptail is underwater? Like,
to me, it feels like a little bit more than that. One thing I do think is interesting is with the Japanese of Roger saying, "I left my treasure. If you want it, if you want to go find it," is actually like, "If you want it, I left it there." And he uses a word for there that actually could mean like down there or like at the bottom, for example. And so I think that's a very common reading, right? Like the kanji for it, the way you would say is like, I left it down there would be the implication for it. And so I think that's one of the things that people find really interesting about this theory is it would be a worthwhile interpretation of Oda's words, in particular because a lot of the within Japanese, there's a lot of different word plays that he does use where he's taking words that are interpreted one way and using them a different way, even with the way One Piece is written, where you are actually told that it's like the super secret treasure that connects everyone. That's not something that actually translates in any way in English, despite it being something that every time you see One Piece written is written in Japanese. So that's another piece of it. But what theory do you have for me today, Abraham?
Just in case it wasn't clear, that was an F class thing. Because I never actually said anything. You know, I just want to make that. So my theory comes from Grand Line Review. And it basically predicts that Blackbeard at some point will become the Pirate King. And the basis of this prediction is that both Luffy and Blackbeard's character are very integrally tied into this whole idea of fate, right? We hear Blackbeard talk about fate a lot. We know that he's made a lot of very conscious decisions across his life that seem to be like guided under like this belief that, you know, this is what he's fated to do. The Yama Yama no Mi chose me as this devil fruit. Like I was fated for this devil fruit. I went onto Whitebeard's ship because that was like this would give me the best opportunity to like fulfill all of my goals that I'm fated to like accomplish. Those aren't the words verbatim used. But what Liam from Grand Line does is he basically then ties the story of Blackbeard to the story of Macbeth. And for people who haven't read Macbeth, it's basically the story of this Scotsman who gets not a prediction, a prophecy. Thank you. From three witches.
Our producer. Thank you. Our producer, Alex Holloway, came and gave him the right word. Thank you.
I knew it was a P word. I was like, it's not a prediction. He gets a prophecy from three witches.
A+ in his audition.
Yeah.
Whatever. Listen, man. I'm watching. It's a Japanese video, and so it's like Merukutator. So I have no freaking clue how to look.
Oh my god.
Mercator projection. Thank you.
Yeah. So Macbeth gets a prophecy from these three witches, where they're basically like, these are the titles you will achieve throughout your life, and eventually you will become the King of Scotland. And in order to make this prophecy come true, he then goes about killing a bunch of his allies and friends, and eventually kills the King of Scotland in order to, like I said, make the prophecy come true. And eventually his obsession with, I guess, achieving what he's fated to do leads him to make a bunch of enemies, one of which then eventually, kills him and what.
Right.
And what Liam points out is that Blackbeard, at some point in the series, Oda has shown that, he has like a mother and like two sisters that are, I don't know, they're technically not canon because they're not in the series, but Oda like did draw them. And, Blackbeard also, there's three witches. There's a lot of stuff.
Macbeth, there's three witches.
Sorry, in Macbeth, there's three witches, and Blackbeard himself, there's a lot of different things that tie like three to him. Like his Jolly Roger has three skulls.
Right.
A lot of people speculate that he's going to have three devil fruits and whatnot. So
Right.
there's this idea that maybe Blackbeard, the reason why he was able to make all of these decisions from such a young age, like joining Whitebeard's crew, like looking for the Yami Yami no Mi, was because he received some kind of prophecy from, I guess, whatever his equivalent of the witches would be. And he is now making all of these decisions very actively in order to try and achieve his dream, which is to become the Pirate King.
So I have a combination review of this. The idea that Blackbeard has some kind of prophecy, I think, is, to me, that's an S-class theory, although it's not really fleshed, like, in a lot of ways, it's not fleshed out enough to be an S-class theory on its own. But the idea yes, like the moments like this fruit chose me, I think a lot of the things I've talked about is the potential of if he's a buccaneer, he has some amount of understanding of whatever that mythology is about Nika and potentially like whatever other god is when they talk about his lineage being special. I think that the idea that he feels like he's fulfilling some kind of destiny, like his ship is called the Saber of Zebek, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that the idea that he's fulfilling some kind of destiny or knowledge that he has, is S-class. The whole Macbeth connection seems totally extraneous to that to me. I've been talking for a while about how I think if he's a buccaneer, he has this something he's trying to do that we don't necessarily understand and that he's been motivated by.
Yeah.
So the idea that it's Macbeth is an F-class theory. The whole three women thing, it's like there are a lot of things. Like there's a rule of three in photos where it's like you want to have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. There's a rule of three in just lists.
Yeah.
Whenever you write something, you probably even in high school are taught like, sometimes like 3 is nice to have, right?
Yeah.
Like something, something, and something. And so the idea of trying to connect that to Macbeth felt totally superfluous to me. What I think would really make this an S-class theory is coming up with the answer to what is that prophecy and do we have any understanding of how that would impact the rest of the story.
I think that's a fair point. I do want to just say real quick that we do know Oda draws from a lot of different cultures, a lot of different civilizations, a lot of different works of literature, right? And Shakespeare is not something that he's ever drawn from, but I think it wouldn't be unreasonable. Like, I agree, it's a stretch at this point to tie them together, but
it is equally as what if is as anything I say in other theories about underground.
But S-class anyway. You gave it an S-class, so I'm going to take that as a win.
I gave part of it as an S-class, and it was the part that had nothing to do with him talking about Macbeth. And so then the part that was more related to things that I've been saying. But my second theory is from my guy, Uteron. He suggests that the world is part of a connected artificial intelligence, a sort of successful punk records that encompasses a lot more people. The one thing he works, this is kind of a wordplay, but the power of love is something we talk about. Ai no chikara, the word for love is I. And he's kind of like, yes, what if? What if? That we're kind of talking about, what if we're kind of talking about the power of AI in terms of this being a larger artificial intelligence similar to punk records. And the D, or a defect, are a group of people who don't follow those rules, and that's what the world government is seeking to control, is that, like...
So we basically have the Matrix.
That's one way you could say it. That's the way you could put it.
Yeah.
S-class or F-class?
Yeah, that's gonna be another F-class.
You want to laugh like that?
Because you look at me with like, I look at your eyes when I say this, right? And you have like this hopeful look. You're like, maybe this is the one that's gonna sell Abraham. And I'm just like, why do you bring me this garbage? No, I mean, like, this just seems too sci-fi-y. Like One Piece is not like some kind of science fiction, series, right? Obviously, we have hints of that with like the Germa, 66 and whatever. But like
a lot of science, there's a lot of science stuff, a lot of research. The DNA factors or lineage factors that have to do with science. Obviously, there's like the ancient kingdom seems to be very technologically advanced, things like that.
Yeah. I just
Vegapunk is a scientist. He actually does have a split consciousness and has been trying to create some kind of joint consciousness among a bunch of people.
Right. Records. But like, just no. I think to me, it's just the idea. The idea that everyone is under control of like this programming or whatever that like keeps them in line. Like they are. I think it's a much. So the idea of us being the world government creating some kind of utopia, not a utopia is not the right word, but creating the impression that through propaganda that all these islands that they're protecting are benefiting from the world government.
Right.
Meanwhile, really they're the ones pulling all the strings and creating a lot of the turmoil in the world. Kind of like take Dressrosa, but make it much, much, much larger scale. Right. What Doflamingo. That is a much, much more beautifully written, I think. Maybe not power. What you know what I mean? Like that.
You say that, but what Dressrosa wasn't just him creating propaganda. It was actually some kind of mind control of a huge percentage of the population who doesn't remember anyone who gets turned into a toy.
Right, but it was okay. How do I put this? I think that is very different from what you're saying, right? The Sugar's ability is essentially needed in order to keep people from revolting.
I'm just saying that when you talk about what the world government's doing and comparing it to saying Doflamingo is more compelling, I'm saying if there was some kind of mind control or brainwashing from the world government, that there was an aspect of that in what Doflamingo
you could read it like that. That's not how I read it.
Some combination of those two things would be particularly interesting.
No, I don't think this idea of brainwashing is interesting at all.
It's obviously I don't think this is the kind of thing that is actually true, and I'll say that I have written in my notes Abraham's gonna rate this.
Yeah, of course, you knew.
But I do think what's really interesting about this is it brings up for me thoughts about how the world government is actually controlling people, if potentially they're doing something that they maybe even think is good for the world or good for the population. And at the very least, that would create for me some number of interesting possibilities of what this like decision that might have to be made after Luffy and Blackbeard are potentially still standing after defeating him in the world government, like what that potential decision about the world might have to look like in terms of how we use the eventual treasure and history of the world. And I don't think it takes away if there's some amount of brainwashing and control from the... Like, I don't think it takes away some amount of brainwashing and control from the impact that it's actually having on people.
You think if this brainwashing thing were to be a real thing?
Maybe maybe the ancient weapon in the sky is a satellite.
No, I got a quick question.
And it's doing brainwashing science
when the world government is like overthrown, for example, right? Are people just gonna remember what happened in the Void Century or something? Is that the idea? Like you know what I mean? So I'm saying if people in like Dressrosa, if we take like that example where you're like, they're mentally manipulating these people, they've forgotten about all their loved ones. The moment Sugar was taken out, everyone was just like, oh my god, how did I forget about my husband? How did I forget about my kids? All this other stuff, right? People like, it's like you woke up out of this dream that you were having, right? All of these citizens. Right. I'm saying, would you expect something like that to happen to the world at large in One Piece once the world government went?
Exactly what it would look like. I think that, again, there are a lot of these things that I think are interesting ideas that I don't have an exact, fully fleshed out concept of exactly how it would be affecting the world. I just think that like the potential of that thing happening would be interesting. It would be interesting to see how it actually evolves. Okay. But I know you think it's an F-class theory.
Of course I do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do we got next today?
Got some
Abraham?
big news.
Big news.
one, I don't know, I can't call him this. I was gonna say a legend.
I mean, he is a legend.
He is a legend. He's a legend for
Right.
he's probably more infamous than he is famous. Not probably. He's definitely
we're
more
off
famous.
One Piece now, everyone.
Yeah, we're off One Piece.
Right?
Yeah,
culture time.
O.J. Simpson died. He died of prostate cancer at the age.
Is that how he died? I didn't even see that.
At the age of 76. Get yourself screened. Maybe not you. You're not that old. But in general, if you're probably like pushing 50, 60, start to get yourself screened for prostate cancer, because it does kill people, and it is very, very treatable if you catch it early enough. I saw some wild takes about OJ on Twitter. In general, I feel like Twitter is kind of the place I go to when stuff like this happens. Just because the anonymity lets some people are pretty funny on Twitter.
Right.
Apparently he died at his bedside with a bunch of his grandchildren and children around him, and allegedly had them sign like NDAs and put their phones, like keep their phones outside or whatever when they went to go see him. What do you make of the life and death of OJ? What do you think? How do you think that shaped America?
I thought you were gonna be like, what do you think he said to them on his
Well, what do you think? Do you think
OJ said?
Do you think he confessed? You think at his deathbed?
That's what you have me wondering. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean,
that's what you have me wondering.
Why is he sorry? They signed an NDA.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? And who's gonna sue them? Now that he's dead, it's a really interesting question, and it's one of these things. I was talking about it with my mom and stepfather when I was visiting them in Hickory, North Carolina, just before I came here, and it's really difficult to, I think, imagine what OJ meant to both the Black community and just his superstardom. I was reading something earlier or watching something earlier. A friend who's a reporter for track and field was commenting about how OJ was a broadcaster for track.
Yeah.
Even. He won the Heisman in college.
Yep.
He was an MVP in the NFL, and at a time when running backs were really some of the superstars of the league, he was by far the best.
The first player to rush for 2,000 yards, and he did it in a 14 game season.
Right. Yeah. And so to me, it's one of the things that I don't feel like I have an exact appreciation for how famous this dude is.
Yeah.
But it feels like almost the beginning. You can imagine how it's the beginning, and to be clear, we're both born in 93, you're 94, but that's
right around the trial,
right around the time that the trial was happening. And it's easy to imagine how this is sort of the beginning in a lot of ways of the celebrity culture that we kind of have today, where we're focusing on every little aspect of people's lives, where we're focusing on the scandals and trying to make them fall. I mean, from my understanding, is one of the first everyone's just tuning in type things.
Yeah.
What was him on the car chase?
It
right?
was.
And imagine Tom Brady in a car chase. Yeah. After the police being in his house with
OJ was bigger than Tom Brady. Legitimately. I just want to because what you're saying is true. I don't think, because everyone knows him. I think everyone our age really only knows him for the murder trial and everything I think he did, that I think most people think he did.
Right.
But he was one of the first Black athletes to be almost unanimously accepted by white America. Muhammad Ali was obviously a legend around that time and was beloved by the Black community, but he was not loved overall, right? OJ was doing these Hertz commercials. He was, like you said, he was the Heisman. He was beloved. And ESPN actually has an amazing documentary, I think, that everyone should watch. It's called OJ Made in America. It's a 4-part documentary that goes not just into the trial, but into his childhood, his upbringing, race relations in America, all of these different things that contribute to what OJ ended up developing into, and how all the different factors that played into the not guilty verdict that eventually came through, right? I think one of the funny things is, when I was maybe 16 or 17, when maybe it wasn't that, when that second trial happened, when he actually got put in jail for the armed robbery stuff.
The effects.
Yeah. I remember my parents telling me.
That's just crazy.
Yeah. It was wild.
Like, what a thing to do.
My parents told me they're like
to be OJ Simpson and do that, like both
it was stupid.
fame and also like
I mean,
you were the dude that everyone's like, this dude killed this woman.
The
and
CTE the CTE kicked in.
For you to go on an armed robbery spree to steal your own memorabilia is like so bonkers. But please continue.
So I remember my mom and dad telling me they're like, they've been trying to arrest this guy for years. They try and there are a lot of people genuinely in the Black community who don't think he's guilty or don't really care that he about whether or not he did it. Right. And I think a lot of it stems from a lot of racial discrimination that's historically happened. I think
there's something about seeing someone like a Black man overcome the criminal justice system,
right,
in a way where it's like where it feels like rich white people do this all the time.
Right. No, exactly. But what they said to me is they tried to get him before, they couldn't get him, and they keep on coming after him, and now they eventually got him. They painted OJ in a victim light. Now I'm older. I'm that's kind of wild. Yeah. But it's I think it's not an uncommon opinion to have in the Black community.
Yeah.
And I feel like people aren't going to be particularly vocal about this, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who aren't all that upset about his that. Yeah, aren't that upset about his passing, right? They I don't want to say that they see OJ as a martyr, but they're like, all of these atrocities, all of these things have been committed against us for so long, that they're kind of OJ is kind of the comeuppance.
Right.
You know what I mean?
All I'm gonna say is, if you're gonna celebrate that, I hope you celebrated Henry Kissinger 10 times. So our next segment is the David is it DZ, excuse me, one of our friends' dating update.
DZ?
Yeah, we got.
You're gonna keep it anonymous?
I mean, I feel like we shouldn't have put him on blast like that.
He wants to come on the podcast.
Oh, he wants to? Oh,
eventually.
Well, okay, so then this is perfect. The David Zhang dating update. Abraham's roommate and our friend David Zhang was with us at our good friend Chris Noda's 30th birthday yesterday, and our friend David Zhang, not to be confused with David Zhang, a friend of ours from high school, was asking for advice on a girl situation. He's 27, been on 2 dates with a lovely lady friend who's 26, and not sure what to do. On their last date, they went to a museum. He felt like he had a good time with her, and they sat a little close, and their arms were touching. I asked him if he got excited when their arms touched, and he declined to answer. I think he definitely knew what I was talking about. I think he got.
Why did you ask him that?
I think he got a little excited. That's what I'm saying. I think he got a little excited. After the date, he said he sent her a lovely poem that he found on the internet.
Oh my god!
But so because he doesn't know feel like he knows her quote unquote values, i.e., if she wants to get married, have kids, how she values money, he doesn't know if they should go out again.
Yeah.
Abraham, this man's crazy, right?
I feel crazy, right? David should have been born 30 years ago when it comes to he just overthinks all. Honestly, he's sending a poem to someone after the second date is such a sweet thing. He's such a sweet guy. But I also feel like if I got that, I would I might read too much into it. You know what I mean? I'd be you're more invested in this than I am.
Well, bro, he was talking about how he's not sure because he has all of these other questions about does she value these same specific things? And he's like, yeah, I don't know if she, maybe she's more excited than I am. And I'm like, bro, she thinks you're in love with her. He read the poem to us, and it was all, he's reading it, and it's all something about walking. It's a very sweet, walking down a road, or this kind of stuff. And I'm like, bro, she thinks you're in love with her after 2 days right now. She doesn't think oh, this guy's having questions, and I'm in love with him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's just the classic overthinker. After 2 dates, you're not expected to know if you're going to be long-term compatible with one person. No. Right? 2 dates, I think, are they a serial killer?
Yes.
Do they have blatant red flags that I know I need to avoid?
Yes.
And then maybe try and figure out if you have physical chemistry.
Right, and all I'm saying is, he got excited. It sounds like we got. He didn't say he got excited. He seemed like he got a little excited. So, you know, all I'm saying is if you notice your arms touching that much, like I'm not gonna notice my arm touching you that much. I'm saying if my arms touch, that's something I notice and remember. I probably got a little excited. So it sounds like there's a little potential physical chemistry. That's all I'm saying. Continue. Sorry.
No, I think, but yeah, I think he's just an overthinker, and he's trying to take the information that he has right now and be like, and like figure out, am I going to want to settle down with this person? And I think part of it is because he doesn't want to waste her time. Like he's not even thinking about himself. He's just like, I don't want to, like, he literally told me I don't want to lead her on. And I'm like, if you don't know, if you know that there's no future with her,
right,
and you continue to go out with her just for whatever reason, maybe you could say that you're leading her on.
I can give some more insight because, you know, we're talking with our friend Sean and, you know, and Rachel, and, you know, got a little bit more context for that, is that he had the first person he dated, it was someone who, you know, they made out a little bit, and then it felt like he ended up just continuing to be in the relationship because it felt like it was what she wants, not what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can understand how you would react from having been in that situation and be really afraid of ending up in that situation again.
Yeah.
But I also think that that's one of the things that as you date more and get more mature about dating, you can understand the difference between being really excited and having fun.
Yeah.
Yes. I've been saying excited in a different context. That time I really meant in the like innocent, like your heart's fluttering and you're enjoying it and having fun. And leading someone on and being like, and not knowing when you actually have to set that boundary.
Yep.
But it's like you said, right? At 2 dates, I think we've said this in the podcast before. It's like, is this person a serial killer? And if not, and if I enjoy their presence and I think they're cute and like all of those things, then why not just keep going and find out? But every time we would say this in probably even stronger words than we said it today, like, you know, because he would just keep being like, I had a really good time on the date. And I'm like, well, then what is your freaking problem? Like, you just said, he's like, I had a lot of fun. Yeah. Oh, yeah, our arms were touching and it felt good. I liked it. Yeah.
It sounds
I'm like, what? You're answering your own freaking question.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think that's one of the things as you get older and date, you definitely come to appreciate is you don't understand someone after 2 dates, and you have to just keep seeing them if you're enjoying it and having fun. Oh, and every time we said that, every time we said that, you would just like look away and then see him for like 2 seconds, just like with his face down, like kind of muttering to himself. And then he would ask another
you
question.
had this man pressed.
Like David. Then he would ask another question. He would ask us questions. So I swear to God, David, like just.
I will say, I feel like this is part of his personality in general, in terms of pleasing other people too. Because like Jordan mentioned, we're roommates, and I feel like I noticed this kind of behavior to some degree in our own relationship, where it's like I will avoid telling him some of the smaller things that maybe might slightly inconvenience me, because I feel like in his head he'll build it up to be like so much more.
Right, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And because he doesn't want to upset anyone, he always wants like to make people happy. Right? And I think it's just like him taking that and then putting that into a relationship where he's not able to, if he wanted to leave that relationship with his ex, right? He doesn't feel comfortable enough.
Right.
Like, this is what I want. Right. I understand maybe that's not what you want, but I want this for myself. And he's not able to say that. And I feel like that's a skill he's got to develop.
Producer's wife, actually, Katie, was talking about how that was something she had to learn how to do, and that was something that really helped their relationship, because when she wasn't doing it, it was really difficult.
No, and he's got to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
I think he does.
Well, the good news is hopefully we'll be able to have him on, and we'll figure out if he learns how to do that over the course of time. You'll definitely get another David Zhang dating update in the next few weeks, we hope. But that's all we have for time. Next week, we'll finally have a chapter, so I'm not going to have all these scratches all over my body. And come back next week to hear our thoughts on chapter 11, 12. And maybe at the next break, we'll finally get into the YouTubers that we like and hate on. No promises, because we've been talking about that for a month. In the meantime, we are your friends who read One Piece. Help us get more friends by liking, sharing, giving us 5 stars. Come on, be our 4th Spotify review.
Yes.
And keeping an eye out for YouTube clips.
Keep in mind
Abraham's ugly mug on all of the thumbnails.
2 out of our 3 Spotify reviews, I think, are me and Jordan.
So now that we're at 500 listens, I think it's time to get one of you. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Go out and review us later.
Take it easy.